Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little big guy right here. This is the Real Steel Knives Megalodon. First off, though, I want to thank very much my buddy Chris for sending this little guy, well, huge guy, along. This is not a knife I would have checked out normally, and so thank you very much for that. Next thing, let's do some size comparison real quick. This is a big one. Here it is against the Ontario Rat number 2, the Spyderco Delica, and the Ontario Rat number 1. So you can see size-wise, blade length-wise, it's even excelling the Rat 1, making it a pretty substantial knife. And in fact, the degree of the substantiality here is best measured by, well, measuring it. And we're coming in right around 3.91 inches, according to this measurement here. So that's a beefy freaking knife right there. And so that's your size. And then finally up against probably its closest competition in a lot of ways, this guy right here. This is the ZT-0452CF. So you can see that in terms of overall size, the 452 is maybe a little bit bigger. But, yeah, they are similar, and they kind of have a similar layout and shape and whatnot. So there you go. Then a couple of other quick notes. Real Steel. Who the heck's Real Steel? Well, there's a Chinese company. They are they're being, a lot of their stuff is being made by San Renmu. Although actually they I don't know who's making this. I've never seen anything like this out of San Renmu. But hey, who knows? Maybe they got a high-end division. But anyways, look, I've had some negative experiences with Real Steel in the past on the channel. There, I've had some terrible knives from them, and I've had terrible knives that I've handled just at shows and things like that. So, but the thing is, enough people have told me that their high-end is different and better that I want to give it a shot. I'm always happy to give a second chance if I have reason to believe that something will actually be different, and so I decided to do that. But keep in mind that I've had those experiences, and that may be biasing me a little bit negatively towards this guy. Then finally, there is no disassembly video on this because the knife is thread-locked freaking shut. We'll come back to that. Oh my God, are we going to come back to that? But nonetheless, that's why you're not seeing a disassembly. So let's go ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of your Real Steel Megalodon here. So first off, on the good side, this has a very nice lockup on it. It is a very solid 40% lockup, absolutely secure. There's no question whatsoever here. There are no safety issues at all with this knife that I can see, and that's a beautiful thing. It is also a very easy to open knife, because you can see here they've got some nice jimping down here. And it's got there's plenty of space for me to just kind of shove my thumb over there. And so this knife pops open just beautifully. I'm a big, big fan of that. Very, very nice. Next thing, the blade on this guy has got a lot going for it because it is a nice blade shape here. You got some flat, you got some belly. In fact, the shape is very similar to the 452 here in terms of overall profile here. But you've also got this very nice, attractive grind going on here. The blade steel on this guy is M390 steel, which is a very serious steel. That is one of the best, if not the best, knife steels out there. And, you know, it is actually ground such that it is relatively thin behind the edge. It's not the best slicer ever, but it's not bad behind. So the blade on this guy is very impressive. Next thing, they have a substantial amount of internal milling, at least on the show side here. I'm going to see if I can show that off. Let me grab a little bit of light and put that on the subject there. As I destroy everything, here we go. So you can see there is some substantial internal milling, and so that actually does help to reduce the weight, making this knife a little bit less heavy than I expected it to be. If this were just 2 solid chunks of titanium, we'd be coming in higher, but it's 4.28 ounces for the 3.9 odd inches. Compare that here to the ZT-452. Even though this is half titanium and this is half carbon fiber, they're coming in very similar sorts of weight. And so that's actually pretty impressive. I do appreciate that they've done that. Next thing, the ergonomics on this knife are very nice. This really does feel great in the hand, and for a couple of reasons. You can see here, it's got these very nice bits of contouring here. Contouring, 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 contouring. That's great. It's got this thing right here, this little cutout, and I'll come back to that a little bit later, but that actually helps ergonomically because it means that there aren't straight edges here. This on the inside here is even chamfered, and the clip is done nicely such that it absolutely does not create a hot spot. It's unproblematic. This is a very, very nice clip. I'm a big fan of it, and so ergonomically speaking, this is a great knife, and I'm a big fan of that. Next thing, Real Steel actually now appears to offer a warranty. Last time I had some of this stuff on my table was about a year ago. And at that point in time, their website had no mention of it. Now they talk about, here's an email address, send us a picture. And so it sounds like they're trying to help people out. I haven't tested it. I don't know of anybody who has, actually. But it's nice to see that they're actually doing that now. Next thing, this clip actually looks like it would be awful, but it works pretty well. It has some ramp, and this area here is the concern. Anytime you have the clip on top of the lock bar relief, that's always terrifying. But the thing is, the way it's done here isn't actually very snaggy. And so I like that very much. Fit and finish on this guy overall is quite good. I have no real room to complain about fit and finishing here. This is a beautifully made knife. And then finally, there are some really nice details here. I already mentioned some things, like the chamfering here on the sides of the knife that make this more ergonomic. Your little internal lanyard hole thing, though, I gotta be honest with you, I think that with a lot of lanyard holes, that might be cut open by the blade, or a lot of lanyard materials, that is. But it is what it is. You've got this nice little kink here in the lock bar here, and I don't know what that's for. I mean, I guess it prevents the lock bar from moving in this direction, although it never really would. But you know what? It looks neat. I like it. There's no problem with that there. The lock bar relief cut is very uniquely done. I mean, you can see here that unlike a lot of knives that have just, a straightforward cutout or something like that, they've actually done something a little more artistic with it, and it kind of reinforces the overall sharky feeling, as does this pocket clip here, which is a functional shape, and it's just a spring clip, but it works very nicely. And frankly, it contributes to the overall sharkitude of this knife. And a Megalodon, I believe, is a prehistoric shark, so it makes sense. The logo on here, as we can see here, is beautifully engraved. It's nicely done. That's a very nice little thing. The pivot looks very nice, and honestly, the blade on it is very attractive. It's got itself some sort of a machine finish, but there's a little bit of a polish to it, so you can see a little bit of light reflection. And then it's also got itself a nice little swedge, I'm sorry, not swedge. It's got itself a nice little grind plunge here. It's subtle and curved. They have enough of a sharpening choil such that it's not a problem. So those are very nice details, and I gotta say, I do appreciate them. So, to wrap it up, on the good side, there were very, very nice details, which I appreciate a lot. The fit and finish on this guy was very, very nice. The clip looks like it'd be awful, but it works pretty well. Real Steel now offers a warranty, or at least their website suggests they do. They have some nice internal milling, very nice ergonomics, a nice blade, and it is very, very easy to unlock and lock up, and it's, well, absolutely solid lock. So, that's great to me. Let's talk about, though, what's actually great. And to me, what's great about this knife is the action. This is just a great action. It is roughly equivalent in terms of the quality of flipping, in terms of the overall action, to the 0452 CF I have here. The 452 is maybe a little tiny bit smoother, but you know what? The action on, actually it's smoother. But look, the action on this is absolutely great. The deploy on it is just pleasurable. It's got a really, really nice detent on this guy. And on the back side, I mean, if you just drop it in there, it drops home, no freaking problem. So I gotta say, I like the action on this very, very much, and it reminds me very much of some other really high-end actions for other really high-end knives. So to me, that's what's great here, is the action on this is very, very, very good. The bad side, first off, it is a little bit on the huge side. It's to the extent where it's going to be illegal in a lot of different places, and, well, whatever, but that's more a matter of taste than anything, so there you go. Next thing, I gotta say, I'm not super impressed by the blade writing here. Now, look, I understand, and this seems to be the case, that there is like a default font that Chinese companies use, because let's be real here, and I'm not being, like, snarky or anything, but a Chinese company does not necessarily have the Roman characters. That's not their thing. And so it may be that there are only one or two fonts available in the factory, etc. And so, you get these less than inspired choices. But honestly, that doesn't look so impressive. I'm not a big fan of that. And so I would have liked them to take a little more time on that. But you can see here, actually, there's a much nicer font down here at M390. By the way, this knife is just oozing oil. It seems to have been soaked in it before coming to me. Anyways, so the blade writing is not impressive, but that's a complete and total nitpick. On to more bigger issues here. First off, the fasteners on these guys, they've done something that I find very personally annoying. You can see here that these are Torx driver bits, but there is a little dish. You can see how there's a little chamfer leading into the screw there. And as a result, there is very little effective depth of these Torx bits. So as you slide if you put the driver in there, it wants to skip because there's only a little tiny portion of the bit that's actually flat wall up to the side there. I am not super impressed with this. These are very shallow bits, and that makes it very hard, frankly, to, they want to skip around. This is an ugly little thing. I've seen it from a couple of other Chinese companies before, but it's not great. And so I hope that they're able to use deeper fasteners in the future. It's completely a nitpick, but it's also one of those things that over the long run could make a major difference. And I mean, compare, for instance, to the 452 CF here with a very nice deep hole. It's just great. Then finally, on the bad side, the value on this guy, to me, doesn't feel all that super strong. The price on this guy is $206. And look, at some level, it's M390. It's a titanium frame lock. It is well built. And you are saving, even for that, $15 off of the U.S. street price for the 452 CF, which I think is a very comparable piece. The thing is, the ZT titanium versions have come in similar price points. They were using S35VN, but they were made in the USA. They had construction that could be disassembled. They have a well-tested and well-known warranty division. And it's only $30 less or so than the titanium, than the M390 version of the 452 there. And so, look, this is not the kind of, oh my god, face-melting value that I want out of a Chinese micro brand. Maybe I'm being a little bit unfair here. Maybe I'm expecting things from that kind of area of the industry that isn't universally going to be the case. And it will certainly be different in a country, for instance, where ZT is not available or where ZT has a much higher markup, where this might actually be a much more value-friendly option. But at least to me, nobody would play the lottery if it cost $1 and you might win $1.50. Similarly, I don't know that I would buy a Chinese micro brand sort of knife, especially one with an on and off history like Real Steel, if they're not bringing in value at that level of like, oh my god, how are you selling it for this? And I feel like that's not quite where this is. Rolling the dice needs to pay off, and although this is a nice knife, it's not the kind of like, whoa, in the sense I'd want if I'm going to take a little bit of a risk here. I'm going to admit, though, very freely, this could be my bias. If you've had better experiences with Real Steel in the past than I have, this might feel a lot more like a safe bet, and it might feel a little bit more valuable. But for me, when I'm buying from a company I don't trust, the price had better be really good. And this is a good price. It's certainly, there is value there, but it's not like, oh my god, value that would compel me to go this route, rather than paying a little bit more for a knife from a company I trust a little bit more. But again, you're welcome to consider that as bias and consider that as a little bit crazy. The value is there. So, to me at least, that's what's bad here, is that the value just isn't as strong as I'd like it to be if I'm buying from a relatively unknown brand. Well, okay, that's not fair, but from a brand which I don't trust, we'll put it that way. They've got these really shallow fasteners, which are not a great thing. The writing on the blade is not great. It has, and it is a pretty huge knife, which is not going to be a great choice for a lot of people. On the ugly front, there were two issues. First off, this guy is locked absolutely freaking shut. What I mean by that is that it's, in addition to using these really shallow fasteners, it is thread locked very securely shut. I tried. I really did try. I tried to do a disassembly video, and then later on I tried, with the permission of my viewer, to get in there with a soldering iron and melt down some of that thread locker. But there was just nothing doing here. And it got to the point where I realized that if I tried any further, I would probably run the risk of damaging the knife, so I stopped. And that is really ugly. This kind of strong thread locking, especially on a knife from a nascent company with a warranty division that's kind of untested, kind of smells a little bit like disposable knife to me. That's fine on a cheap thing. If I'm getting a nice knife for $20 or $30, I can live with that. That's okay. But not at this kind of a price point. And I would like to think, and I want to, again, try and be fair here, this might be an aberration. And in fact, Kevin Cleary, another YouTuber, check him out, said that he was able to get his apart. And so either they've made a change in this run of them, moving to a stronger thread locker, or this was just a bad assembler who just dumped an entire bottle of a thread locker into the pivot there. But either way, this shouldn't have left the factory in this way. And the knife, as a result, cannot be maintained, even though it is a flipper on bearings that eventually will need to be. And so that, to me, is really ugly. And yeah, absolutely. The other ugly thing here is that I've had a lot of trouble with Real Steel in the past, so you might want to buy from somebody with a really good return policy. That way, if you get yours out of the box and the action isn't very good, and especially since it's thread locked shut and you can't tune it, you want to make damn sure that you can send it back with no problem, no harm. So just something to keep in mind. But luckily, Real Steel does have a pretty good distributor base in the U.S., so that's pretty straightforward. And so those are the ugly things to me, is that you're probably going to want to use somebody with a good return policy, given some of the experience I've had with them in the past, and it is thread locked shut, which is just not acceptable at a knife this expensive. On the final conclusion front, look, at some level, this is a very surprisingly nice knife, and it's probably only surprising to me given my experience. I'm trying to move past that. But there are lots of wonderful things to love here. I mean, lots of good details. You've got these nice chamfers on the side here. It is beautifully machined. I mean, seriously, maybe I didn't give enough credit there, but this is nicely done with the internal milling and things like that. The action on this guy is very nice, particularly the deploy is great. It is a very nice flipper, and there's nothing on here that feels particularly lazy or critically underdone. At a very real level, this is a knife with a lot of details, a lot of joy to it, and it is a solid competitor to the 452 on the construction and machining alone. And frankly, given the fact that there's a steel upgrade here, given the fact that this is full titanium, it is a knife that you should be considering here. And it would probably even be in the range of gem, particularly if they did just a little better on the value, but only for the one issue, and that is the lock-shut construction. And this just kills the knife to me. Because, like I said, you're not allowed to do that on a $200 knife, especially when your warranty division didn't exist a year ago. I'm willing to take on trust a thread locked shut knife from a company that, I know will stand behind it, and I know has a really strong presence. But right there, in this kind of thing, I struggle, and so I lose the ability to recommend it on the basis of it having that fundamental issue here. And like I said, maybe there is a way to break it free. Maybe this was just a mistake. Maybe this one is the only one to ever come out of the factory JB welded shut. But the thing is, that shouldn't ever happen, and that's really, really ugly. So, final conclusion here. Maybe if you're in a place where this is the only high-end piece that's reasonably priced, and that can happen. Absolutely, these Chinese companies can provide better value in parts of the world where, for instance, American-made knives are hard to come by or really expensive. And so if you live someplace where this is really your high-end option that is more affordable than anything else, you know what? It's not a bad knife at all. And you may want to still buy from someplace where you got the option. You might want to check it for Loctite there. But the thing is, it's a solid piece. And if this were the last knife I could ever carry, especially if I could get the damn thing open, I could make do. It's not a problem. In fact, yeah, it's a fine freaking knife in that domain. But the thing is, if you are in the U.S., I'm morally offended by the thread locker here, let's be real. But if you are in the U.S., for instance, with the many, many options here, especially on the higher end there, the value just isn't quite so strong, and the knife becomes a lot less interesting. It is absolutely, though, I will say, this has changed my perception of Real Steel a fair bit, because this is a beautiful and well-made knife. And it is clear that they did give a damn. They made one really bad decision here, but it's clear that they are really trying on this higher end there. And if this were assembled in a way that didn't tell me to go myself, I would be much more interested. But ultimately, at least for me, I feel like there are other knives that are just as nice, that are very, very similar in price point, and don't have some of the baggage in terms of interesting service, as well as I would send people to the 452 here every day of the week. So, although it's a very nice knife, I think that for $200, at least here in the U.S., it just doesn't represent a Real Steel. Anyways, hope this has been interesting to you, that you enjoyed this review, and that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.